What if I told you that one of the most cheerful holidays on the calendar, a day wrapped in leftovers, football matches, and shopping deals, was born from inequality, exploitation, and a rigid class system that decided who deserved comfort and who existed only to serve it? Because the real story of Boxing Day doesn't begin with gifts or gratitude, but with locked doors, cold servants' quarters, and a society built on hierarchy, where celebration for some meant continued labor for others. And to understand its dark origin, you have to travel back to a time when Christmas itself was not a day off for everyone. When December 25th was a luxury reserved for the wealthy. While the people who cooked the meals, cleaned the halls, tended the fires, and stood silently behind chairs were still working, watching the celebration from the edges of the room, knowing that joy was not meant for them yet. Because in medieval Europe and later Victorian England, servants were expected to work through Christmas Day, ensuring their masters enjoyed lavish feasts and warmth. And only after the festivities ended were they finally allowed a break, which came on December 26th, the day we now call Boxing Day, a day when servants were given Christmas boxes, not boxes of joy, but small containers holding leftover food, coins, or discarded items from their employers, a symbolic gesture that reinforced the power imbalance of the era. Because these boxes were not acts of generosity, but reminders of dependence, proof that survival came not from rights or fairness, but from the goodwill of those above you, and the name itself, Boxing Day, didn't come from wrapping presents under a tree, but from literal boxes used to distribute alms, tips, and leftovers to servants, tradespeople, and the poor. A system that made charity feel like kindness while keeping inequality firmly intact. Because instead of fair wages or humane working conditions, people were handed scraps once a year and expected to be grateful. And the tradition didn't stop with servants, as churches played their role too, placing alms boxes inside their walls throughout the year, collecting donations for the poor, which were then opened on December 26th, reinforcing the idea that poverty was something to be managed, not solved, that suffering was acceptable as long as it was acknowledged once a year. And while today Boxing Day is associated with shopping sales and sports, its original meaning was deeply tied to a world where class lines were rigid and mobility was rare, where a person's birth determined their destiny, and where kindness was conditional, given from the top down rather than built into the structure of society. And the darker truth is that Boxing Day existed because servants were not considered worthy of rest on the same day as their employers, because their humanity was secondary to their usefulness. And even the holiday they received came with strings attached, as many servants had to travel long distances back to their families on December 26th, often on foot, carrying their boxes of leftovers, knowing they had only a brief window of freedom before returning to service, a cycle that repeated year after year, embedding exhaustion and submission into tradition itself. And as the British Empire expanded, so did Boxing Day, spreading this class-based custom across colonies, including parts of Africa, the Caribbean, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, exporting not just a holiday but the social values behind it, a reminder of who ruled and who served. And even as societies modernized and servants became workers with rights, the name and date remained, quietly disconnected from their origins, transformed into something more palatable, more commercial, more fun. Because it's easier to sell discounts than to confront history, easier to cheer for football teams than to acknowledge that the day was built on exclusion. And this pattern is not unique to Boxing Day, as history often sanitizes uncomfortable truths, turning systems of control into traditions and exploitation into culture. But when you strip away the layers, you see that Boxing Day was never about generosity in the way we like to imagine. It was about control, about maintaining order by offering just enough to prevent rebellion, just enough to appear kind without ever challenging the structure that created suffering in the first place. And this is why the holiday's origin matters, because it forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about modern society, about how many systems today still operate on the same principle, offering symbolic gestures instead of real change, bonuses instead of fairness, praise instead of protection. And once you see Boxing Day for what it truly was, you can't unsee the pattern. A world where gratitude is demanded from those with the least, where history is rewritten to feel lighter, and where even joy can be built on inequality. And yet understanding this dark origin doesn't mean rejecting the present. It means reclaiming it, because knowing where a tradition comes from gives us the power to redefine what it stands for. To turn a day once rooted in hierarchy into one grounded in empathy, fairness, and shared humanity. And maybe that's the real challenge Boxing Day leaves us with. Not whether we enjoy it, but whether we remember who it was never meant for and what kind of world we want to build moving forward. And if this story changed the way you see Boxing Day, don't let it end here, because history only has power when we remember it. So take a moment to reflect on the traditions you celebrate and the stories hidden beneath them. And if you believe more people should know the truth behind the holidays we take for granted, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who's never heard this side of the story, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, untold histories that challenge what we think we know. Because the past doesn't just explain where we came from, it exposes who we are and who we choose to become.